Hello, my name is Mariana Mazzucato, and I am super thrilled to talk about universal basic income and how it actually relates to something that's very dear to me, which is basically a new theory of value creation. Because in fact, there's nothing to redistribute through universal basic income if we don't actually create value. But often people use this against universal basic income because they say we shouldn't just be redistributing. That actually takes away from the innovation side of the economy. It hurts wealth creation. And in fact, that's completely wrong. What we need to do is to create a foundation of a new economic narrative, a new framing, a new practice, which starts with the idea of collective wealth creation. And only if we do that properly can we ultimately have a rigorous framing on how to make sure that we're not just socializing risks, but also socializing the rewards. So again, we need to have a theory of how there is collective investment, collective risk-taking, collective effort in the economy in order to then create that foundation for a better distribution of that wealth, which is as collective as the wealth created. And I've written quite a lot on the state, but of course, it's not just the state. It's workers, it's state institutions, it's civil society institutions. Of course, it's also business, small, medium, and large. And here we have to actually start from first principles. I believe that the market itself and the economy itself is an outcome of how we govern all the different types of institutions, how we govern public institutions. And I've written a lot about why we should have more explicit public institutions that are driven by shaping and creating the market in order to have more inclusive and sustainable growth. It depends how we govern the private sector, not just by maximizing shares, which leads to huge amounts of extraction in the economy. We've had over $7 trillion used just to buy back shares to boost stock prices, stock options, and executive pay. So how we organize corporate governance to be maximizing stakeholder value, not shareholder value. And also how we organize trade unions and civil society organizations. They can all themselves be governed in different ways. Labor unions have been very important in the past for getting us incredibly important social innovations like the weekend, leave when people are sick, so sick leave, vacation time, better working conditions. We don't have children working in factories because of the labor movement, but the labor organizations themselves can be governed in particular ways. Now, how all these different types of organizations, and we should remember there's very important ones also in civil society, how they interact determines the kind of wealth and value that's created, determines the kind of economy we have. So the economy is not deterministic. There's not any deterministic market forces or economic forces. The economy and the market itself is a result of how we govern the different value creation entities and how they relate one to another. For example, I've been talking a lot recently about how the public-private relationship is too often parasitic and not symbiotic and mutualistic. But that means we actually need some more rigorous metrics for how to foster that type of mutualism, reciprocity, and symbiosis in the economy between business and government. An example I'll give is in Germany, when the KfW, the public bank, provided a loan to the steel industry, it was conditional on that industry lowering the material content of production, which it did through repurpose, reuse, recycle technology. And that's the reason we have green steel in Germany today. It's not because they went to the World Economic Forum to talk about purpose. And that idea of using contracts, whether it's through public loans, intellectual property rights, bailouts, COVID-19 lockdown bailouts to actually foster transformation, a co-investment, a pathway towards reaching a goal, more inclusive, more sustainable. And within that, I'm very interested in the notion of missions and mission-oriented policies. Going to the moon and back 50 years ago required public and private to work together. There was 400,000 people involved. But NASA was very confident of its role. So it used an outcomes-oriented tool like procurement, had lots of different homework problems that had to be solved. But again, the contracts were designed to not create kind of a gambling machine, as I would argue we have today in the health industry and the space sector. So they even had no excess profits in the contracts, which is extraordinary that NASA actually included that in the contracts. It didn't say no profits, just no excess profits. So this idea of actually creating moonshots around the Sustainable Development Goals, there's 17 of them, Every country signed up to them, transforming them into very concrete, inspirational goals that require lots of different sectors, public, private, third sector also to work together, but also different industrial sectors, from transport, nutrition, materials, what we eat, how we move, how we build is, of course, very important for climate. So climate-related missions must be also all-encompassing, but the contracts need to be written properly. And this is, again, where the whole debate about UBI becomes very important, because this requires a massive collective effort. In fact, what I think UBI is about is more about making sure that we are not just sharing the burden, but sharing the bounty. I'm using here the words of Mia Mottley, the Prime Minister of Barbados, who I'm working very closely with right now about rethinking global finance, but also her own mission in Barbados, sharing the burden and sharing the bounty, sharing risks, sharing rewards. But I personally prefer the word like citizens share, citizens dividend, the people's dividend, and share. UBI, the reason I sometimes feel uncomfortable with it is that it's not surprising that it's a concept that has been supported, for example, by the Silicon Valley big tech companies. They love to present themselves as the wealth creators, in the idea that they are then generous and believe in, a check to go to all the different people in a country, in a region, which represents the value created by this sector. And it's then distributed a little piece of it to others that doesn't upset the narrative of where that wealth was created in the first place. The concept of a citizen's share and a citizen's dividend, it can be structured the same way, technically, as UBI, but the narrative, the underlying storytelling, I think is a bit stronger, because it goes right to the point that this isn't about redistributing wealth created by the private sector to others, but a recognition that that wealth and that value was actually created by all those different actors. So I do think storytelling matters. I actually opened up one of my books, The Value of Everything, with that quote, the storytellers rule the world. It was both said by Plato, but also a famous Native American saying. And it's a very important point, because in fact, how we tell the stories of where value is created also underpins the level of equality or inequality that we end up getting. Many regressive tax policies that have increased inequality were lobbied for through stories that were told about wealth and value creation. The fact that capital gains tax is so low in many countries is the result of a story told by the financial sector of their role. When you have millisecond trades creating such excess profits in the system, when you have what I talk about as financing finance, in other words, a huge chunk of global finance just goes back to finance, insurance, and the real estate sector, FIRE, that's the acronym, we have a problem. The way to, change that would be by having a financial transaction tax, but also having capital gains taxes reward those companies that actually foster long-term investments, not short-term millisecond investments. And so again, the fact that then the financial sector has been able to present itself as this value creation machine, I've seen it also within particular buckets of finance, like the venture capital sector, presenting itself as this great risk-taking side of global finance, when actually they have often followed public finance, but ended up getting much more of the share than actually they should have been due, given that collective effort that was made in different sectors like biotech, clean tech, and today AI, digital, and so on. Changing the stories, really focusing on value is collectively created. Workers, businesses, government, civil society, all having a role, but also being able in different sectors to really pinpoint the different efforts that were made. For example, my work looking at how the public sector was responsible for almost every smart technology in our iPhones, internet, GPS, touchscreen, Siri, so the taxpayer, and yet we ended up allowing these excess profits and rents accrue to the big tech companies. These ideas, and also ways to foster a different way to create wealth that is actually recognizing ex ante, not ex post. So in a pre-distributive way, not just redistributive way, that wealth creation, I think, has to underpin any idea around universal basic income, or again, my preference of citizens' dividends and citizens' share. And the problem is that when we talk about a better way to distribute wealth that is not actually linked to a different way to talk about and foster wealth creation that's more inclusive and sustainable, then it's simply not going to work. So thank you very much. I hope these comments were helpful, and have a great day.